it is a modern epidemic, and that it's an epidemic that society hasn't fully acknowledged.
Is loneliness essentially a state of mind?
Loneliness, I think that's a good way to describe it. Loneliness is a state of mind, and it reflects a person's attitude to themselves and the way they feel about the world around them. A person can be lonely in a crowd. A person can be lonely in a relationship, in a marriage relationship. Yet a person can live on their own, live a solitary life, and be quite content, because meaningful relationships are essential for a person to flourish. Human beings need to be connected with others. If we're not, mostly we don't do well psychologically.
So then, what causes a person's loneliness?
Well, loneliness can be due to several things. A person can be lonely because of their personality makeup. Shy, unsure of themselves, low self-esteem. And because of these characteristics, they have difficulty interacting with other people. Social behavior is more of a challenge. Talking to people, establishing friendships is much more of a challenge than it is for the average person. So personality, and very often people with a shy, sensitive temperament have loneliness issues lifelong. Loneliness can result from a dysfunctional background, a socially disadvantaged background, where the person comes into life without the social skills that most of us take for granted. And once again, social functioning is a stress for them. They feel uncomfortable, and because of that they retreat. They avoid social occasions, and over time they gradually evolve into a socially isolated way of life. And then for others, loneliness will follow a loss, a change, an adverse experience, losing a job, a valued job that the person has identified with. Their identity is tied up in the work they do. A police officer, a firefighter, an accountant, a lawyer. The loss of the job, in a way, means they have lost a little bit of their identity. And loss is often followed by further losses. The loss of a job, the loss of financial security, the loss of a home. And over time, this will lead into a socially isolated and lonely way of life. So loss can also occur in the ending of a relationship, where a relationship doesn't work out, and the loss of a partner, again a valued partner, the rejection that one may feel, and the inability to adjust to life following this loss. And the coping mechanisms that are used perhaps are ineffectual. And over time, social isolation and loneliness becomes a factor in this person's life.
So what percentage of people suffer from loneliness?
It has been identified as a major public health problem. For example, in the United States, up to 60% of people acknowledge that they have felt lonely at some point in their lives. 45% of people in the United Kingdom complain of loneliness. Up to 59% of young people under the age of 25 report loneliness. Rates in the general population tend to go down as people get older, but you have a peak then in old age, in elderly people. And of course, old age is a time where once again we experience loss. The loss may take the form of health, and we're left with a disability that restricts our activities, or we have the loss of family, partner, friends, economic loss. And all of these are seen as a stress that impact on the person and forces them to adapt to situations that they may have difficulty adapting to.
So what's driving those statistics?
The changes that are taking place in our society. We live in a mobile society. people move around. People are living in communities where they have no deep roots. People live alone by choice. But the problem with that is the risk of loneliness later on in life. The decline in the extended family, the rise in the single-parent family. Social media makes a contribution. Involvement in social media where you may have frequent digital contact with people, but infrequent contact with people person to person. So we lose the social skills that we need for social interactions because we're not out and about enough. We're not socializing enough. And then, of course, we have an aging society. And with an aging society come the problems of old age that leave us at risk for loneliness. It is a modern epidemic, and that it's an epidemic that society hasn't fully acknowledged and hasn't adjusted to and taken into account the serious economic and social consequences of this epidemic.
So you mentioned some people are more comfortable on their own, and some people are lonely in that situation, or they may be lonely when they're with other people. So how does a person know if their loneliness is a problem?
When it becomes permanent, when it's no longer a temporary state of affairs. I can be lonely, and it's normal for most of us to feel lonely from time to time. But if loneliness becomes a fixed feature in my life, and if the consequences of loneliness are permanent factors that I live with, no contact with friends, few social outlets, a loss of interest in recreation activities, a preoccupation with solitary activities, bad feelings about myself, a shift where I'm beginning to neglect myself and develop faulty living habits, neglectful of diet, no exercise, weight gain, and things like that. All of these are the signs that it is now a problem. It's no longer a temporary factor in your life, and it needs to be dealt with, of course.
Thank you.